While camping deep in Alaska's forest, my own son looked me in the eye, smirked, and said, "Let the Grizzlies keep you company," before driving away with all our gear. The echo of his laughter still hung in the trees when the truck's engine faded into the distance. Gravel spit from the tires, then silence swallowed everything. The only sound left was my own breathing, sharp and uneven, clouding white in the cold Alaskan air. I stood frozen in place, surrounded by towering spruce and endless shadows, trying to understand what had just happened. My son, my only child, the boy I had carried, raised, protected with every ounce of strength after his father died, had left me here to die. No food, no water, no equipment, just me, the clothes on my back, and the memory of his smirk. For a moment, I thought I'd collapse. My legs trembled. My chest felt like a hollow drum. Betrayal is heavy. It crushes from the inside out. But the forest didn't care. The forest waited with cold eyes. I forced myself to whisper, "Breathe. Think. Move." I checked my pockets. Front pocket. A small folding knife I'd kept since my nursing days, handy for cutting threads and packages. Back pocket. My wallet. Useless here. Jacket. A lighter, half full, one I used for candles back home when the power cut out. Nothing else. No compass. No water bottle. No phone signal. He had taken everything that meant survival. I looked up at the canopy. The late afternoon sun filtered through, weak and cold. West. That was my way back to the main road if I could find it. But Alaska swallows people whole when they get cocky. The ranger's words replayed in my head. Move smart, not fast. Fire keeps you alive. Water leads you home. So I started walking, not running, not screaming, just steady steps, marking every tree I passed with a small scratch from my knife. I walked, memories attacked me harder than the cold wind. I saw Mason at 10 years old, standing in the kitchen doorway with scraped knees, crying because kids at school had bullied him. I'd knelt, kissed his forehead, and told him, "As long as I'm here, no one will hurt you." I saw him at 16, demanding a car like it was his birthright. I'd drained my savings to buy him a new one. His father had died when Mason was just 7, and I had promised myself I'd give him everything he ever wanted, because life had already taken so much from him. And now here I was, stumbling through bear country because the very boy I had sacrificed my life for had decided my death was more valuable than my love. My chest burned, not just from the cold, but from guilt. Did I create this monster? Did my love make him weak? The creek appeared suddenly, rushing cold and clear. I knelt, hands shaking, and scooped water into my palms. It bit like ice. I forced myself to drink slowly, remembering training videos I'd once watched as a nurse. Dehydration kills faster than hunger. Then I saw it. A paw print. Wide, deep, claws like daggers etched into mud. A bear had been here, and not long ago. My stomach dropped. I made noise the way I'd been taught on ranger briefings. "Hey, bear! Easy, bear!" My voice cracked, but it was something's. Night came, I gathered spruce boughs and leaned them against a fallen log, creating the shell of a lean-to. My fingers were numb, my breath sharp, but I managed. The lighter sputtered, then caught. Orange flames licked the air. I fed it twigs, then branches, then logs, until I felt its warmth against my skin. I sat close, arms wrapped around my knees, staring at the fire like it was the last friend I had in this world, and I whispered into the flames, "I'm sorry, Daniel." Daniel, my husband. Gone 10 years now. If he had lived, would Mason have turned out differently? Or was this darkness always inside him, waiting? The fire popped. Somewhere out there, a wolf howled. The night pressed close. I didn't sleep, not really. I drifted and startled, clutching the knife in one hand and feeding the fire with the other. By morning, frost clung to my sleeves. My body ached, but I stood. Standing was victory, moving was survival. Every step west was heavy, not just with exhaustion, but with memory. I saw Mason's face when he graduated college. I saw the bills I'd worked double shifts to pay. I saw the endless ways I'd carried him when I should have let him walk. And then I heard his voice again in my head. Let the Grizzlies keep you company, Mom. That sentence was colder than any Alaskan night. I clenched my fists and whispered back. Into the empty air. No, I'll keep myself company. I'll live. The second morning bit my cheeks like salt. I stood, stiff and sore, and told my legs to behave. The lean-to had held. The fire had lived. 2 wins. Small, but they counted. I fed the coals a fist of twigs and watched orange grow, again until heat found my palms. Breathe. Think. Move, I said, the way I used to coach patients through pain. On the worst nights in the ER, we'd count breaths together until the hurting shrank enough to talk. I did that now. 4 in. 4 out. Find the next right thing. Water. The creek's voice led me, thin at first, then loud. My knees complained as I climbed the bank and followed it west. I moved slow over slick stones, keeping my weight low and my eyes busy. Frost-rimmed grass like sugar. My reflection looked back at me from a dark pool, hair stuck to my forehead, smoke in the curls at my temples, mud on my jaw. I looked like a woman who had argued with the night and won on points. At a bend, I found fresh tracks again, wide, clawed, spaced like a heavy animal that wasn't in a hurry. My stomach pulled tight. Hey, bear, I called steady and big. Coming through! My voice rippled across the water and came back softer. I cupped water in my hands and drank. It wasn't wise to gulp anything up here, but wise gets you dead if you do nothing. I filled my mouth, held it, swallowed slow. I wet a bandana I had shoved into my jacket days ago for no reason at all and tied it around my neck. The cold helped me feel present. The sun, pale and thin, slanted through the spruce. Moss coated the north sides of trunks in deep green sleeves. West meant road, or some kind of road. West meant people. I kept the creek near, used it like a friend who doesn't talk much but won't leave. The land rose and dipped like an old quilt. I climbed a low ridge to see farther and froze at the top. Beyond the black press of trees ran a faint cut-through. Brush. 2 shallow grooves, almost the memory of tires. Not a highway, not even a road. But it was a line that people had made, and people don't cut lines for fun out here. They cut them because they need them. I angled toward it, careful not to lose the creek's sound. A stand of Devil's Club blocked the way. Tall stalks. Big leaves like open hands, spines everywhere. You don't push through Devil's Club, it pushes through you. I circled wide, found a gap, and still managed to catch a palmful of thorns. I hissed, sat on a log, and did what I've done 1,000 times for strangers. I cleaned the punctures with creek water, picked what I could see with the tip of my little folding knife, and pressed a clean piece of shirt into my palm. You're going to be fine, I told my own hand, like I would tell a worried parent in a bright ER booth at 2 a.m. The tone helped more than the words. When I stood, my foot slid on a slick root and my ankle rolled with a hot, mean twist. I grabbed a birch for balance and swore once. A quiet word no one but the trees would hold against me. Pain flared, then settled into a deep throb. I tested weight. It held. Not broken. Not today. I tore 2 straight sticks from fallen limbs, split my keychain paracord into strands with my teeth, and bound a quick support. Nurse's hands tying neat, even pressure. It wasn't pretty, but it asked the right question of my ankle. Can you do your job? It answered yes, with a frown. I reached the faint 2-track by noon and followed it until a small level place opened like a pocket beside the creek. Good sight lines. A big rock that could throw heat back. Enough deadfall for a second night if I needed one. I would. It was too far to make the lodge before dark, even if the lodge existed in the direction I was betting on. I built faster and smarter this time. 2 forked sticks driven into loam, a ridgepole between them. Spruce boughs layered thick and slanted so snow or rain would slide. I stacked a knee-high wall of flat stones opposite and lined the gap with green boughs to catch sparks. I rolled a log in place as a bench so I wouldn't crouch until my back screamed. It looked like a camp that had been here before I arrived and would still be here after I left. That made me feel less alone. I needed signal, not just survival. An old stretch of clearing lay 40 yards away where the 2-track widened. I dragged pale birch limbs onto the ground and laid them into letters as tall as a truck. SOS. I packed them tight so they'd read dark against snow patches. If a ranger flew over, if a trail crew rolled through, if any pair of eyes looked down from a ridge, I wanted them to see me even if I was in the trees. Back at camp, I built a small fire ring and a big fire lay, pencil, finger, thumb, wrist, forearm. The lighter coughed once, then gave me flame. I coaxed it into purpose. When the first smoke rose, thin and blue, I fed a handful of fresh spruce tips to make it showy. Green makes loud smoke. I wanted loud. I sat, ankle elevated on a rolled jacket, palms out to heat, and let my brain empty into the flames like they could hold what I couldn't. Memories. Grief is a creature with a long tail. It follows you into rooms you thought were safe, taps your shoulder, asks if you remember. I remembered the night Daniel died. The doctor's mouth had moved and made soft professional shapes. My ears had heard the words like they were underwater. I had walked out into the hospital parking lot, and the sky had been too polite to cry with me. And then Mason had asked if we were going to be okay. I had said, yes, too fast and too sure, because I couldn't bear the sound of no. I said yes again every year after, with things and fixes and rescues. Yes turned into a ladder I held for him everywhere he went until he forgot how to climb without it. I thought about the way he had smiled yesterday, and said, let the Grizzlies keep you company. The sentence cut fresh every time. I replayed it. I pressed my palm to my sternum and felt my heart knock once, hard, like it wanted out. No, I told it. We stay. March doesn't give much. I found a handful of rose hips still clinging like stubborn ornaments. They tasted like tang and grit and memory. I chewed spruce tips for vitamin C and to trick my mouth into thinking it had something to do. On a gravel bar, I turned over rocks until I found 2 fat beetles and a pale grub. I closed my eyes and ate them. My stomach said it would write me a letter about this later. The light leaned. Cold moved in like a guest who didn't knock. I laid wood within reach. I warmed my palms and forearms and face before the fire took the chill out of my bones. The ache in my ankle turned dull, a low drum in another room. I wrapped it tighter, checked color and sensation like a good nurse, and nodded at the foot. I was mad at, but needed. We're in this together, I told it. It arrived just after the stars pricked through. A soft pad on the duff, a stick breaking clean, air changing shape. I wasn't alone any longer, and not in the hopeful way. Took a long stick, buried one end in the coals until it glowed like a vein under skin, and lifted it slow. Hey, bear, I said. Hey, bear. Easy, bear. My voice stayed level because I forced it to. A shadow paused just outside the ring of light, big as a couch, low huff, not angry, not yet, curious and annoyed. The fire threw light on my breath. The bear's breath didn't show. It stood where cold held it dark. The stick flame climbed, small but confident. I held it high. The bear exhaled again, decided I was work and not food, turned with the silence of something taught by winter, to conserve and moved back into trees. My shoulders sagged when it left, like someone had untied a backpack I'd been carrying since yesterday. When my chest stopped hurting, I sang. Not loud, just enough to tell the night where I ended and it began. You are my sunshine, in a voice that had once put a feverish child to sleep. The trees didn't mind my pitch. The fire leaned and listened. It was a small, silly thing. It made me brave. I didn't sleep. I stacked hours like I stacked wood. Careful, steady, aware of how quickly it goes if you don't mind it. Fog held. To the creek like it didn't want to move. I stretched, hissed once when my ankle reminded me it had opinions, and let the fire die to ash. I left the shelter tidy. The way you leave rooms in a house you might come back to because you enjoyed. How they made you feel. I brushed boot prints away from the SOS letters so they'd read clean from above. The 2-track took me west. In places it vanished under last fall's leaves. In others it sharpened into ruts full of melting ice. I found a cigarette butt crushed, flat near a scuff of dried mud and a blackened circle where someone had lit a small fire and behaved. I touched the ash and felt softness that meant it wasn't a year old. People had been here, not ghosts. Real. For an hour, my mind was a metronome. Step, breathe, scan. Step, breathe, scan. The rhythm left room for one thought only: find people. When other thoughts tried to sneak in, blame, grief, the urge to go backward and tape a different mouth onto my son, I let the rhythm drown them. Around mid-morning, the land opened into a muskeg, wet ground pretending to be grass. I skirted the edge. A careless person walks into muskeg and finds out what the word swallow really means. I tested each step with my staff. Twice the ground scooped at my boot and tried to take it. Twice the staff and my old knees saved me from learning how long a person can lie in cold water before giving up. On the far side, I found a gift: a scrap of bright blue cord tangled around a willow, the kind outfitters use for tarps and packs. I unwound it, tested it, and looped it twice around my wrist before stuffing the rest into my pocket. String is civilization. You can tie things to other things and suddenly the world behaves. At noon, the wind shifted. I stopped and lifted my head like a dog that has remembered it's a wolf. At first, I thought it was blood in my ears. Then it grew. A thrum, not plane, not truck on highway. An engine that climbs and settles and climbs again. The sound of a machine dealing with real ground. Another answered. Fainter. ATVs. Or snow machines. People. Hope flared, wild and fast. I put a hand out and touched the nearest tree to steady myself. Slow, I said. Don't break yourself chasing it. I started toward the sound, counting out loud. 20 steps. Stop. Listen. The noise rose, then fell, then rose from a slightly different angle, as if the land was a hand cupped. Around it, the two-track bent left. The sound bent right. I chose the sound. Branches raked my jacket. Devil's Club leaned to remind me it lived here and I was only visiting. I found a faint corridor through alder and took it. My ankle twinged like a tuned string with every step. I thanked it out loud for not quitting. Topped a small hump and the noise bloomed. Nearby, solid, human. Then it cut. Sudden. Clean. Like someone had closed a door on a loud room. Hey! I yelled, all caution gone. Hey! The forest breathed once, twice. Only wind answered me. I tasted metal, part fear, part anger at silence. I pushed on. A minute later, I stepped into a long, bare strip of earth. 2 lines chewed into it. Tire ruts. Between them, boot prints. Ahead, a place where the ruts split and one set ran uphill, into spruce. I touched a footprint. The edges hadn't slumped yet. Fresh. I could have set my foot into it and worn it like a borrowed shoe. You were here, I told the invisible riders. You are here. I followed uphill, breathing too fast. I made myself slow down. People climb sound falls. I climbed anyway. The ruts narrowed, turned to scuffs, then to nothing. The lane ended in a flat spot where the world fell away into a bowl of trees. I looked down into it and saw nothing. No machines, no people. Just a quiet the wind liked. Okay, I said, chest dropping and rising like I'd run a race I wasn't built for. Okay, back on the main 2-track, I picked up my pace to something sustainable. The sky had pulled thin clouds across its face like a veil. Light came soft. The air smelled like thaw. Pain is a liar. It tells you to stop when stopping will kill you. But it also tells the truth. Pay attention, or it becomes something you can't ignore anymore. Mid-afternoon, my ankle swelled against the laces. My stride went lopsided. I sat on a stump and retied my boot, made a figure 8 with the blue cord and the upper eyelets so the support spread like a good brace. I rubbed circulation back into toes that had decided to sulk. Then I stood and nodded. We continue, I said. The foot muttered but complied. The longer I walked, the more the forest felt less like an enemy and more like a teacher. It had a set of rules and it kept them without apology. Fire warms, cold bites, water drops to low ground. Bears don't like surprises. Trees don't care if you hate them. If you follow rules, you get to stay. My son had broken every rule of family, He had chosen surprise over love, hunger over sharing, cold over shelter. He had cut the ropes that tied us to each other and said it was freedom. I had tied too many ropes, then let him hold the ends without learning knots. He had tried to call murder a lesson. I would call consequences by their right name. I passed a snag with a woodpecker, whole big as a soup bowl. Chips lay bright at the base, fresh and pale. Life went on in small, steady ways that didn't care about my story at all. The thought was freeing. The two-track curved toward a ridge where trees thinned and bled more light. I wanted to push and make the top before dark. My ankle voted no. The sky voted no. The temperature voted no, the way it votes here, by taking without asking. I listened. It had cost me a lot not to, and I had no more to spend. I pulled off to a flat spot tucked behind a fallen spruce. I built again, faster now, hands sure, movements learned. Ridgepole, boughs, reflector wall. A small hearth that would be big enough if I fed it right. The lighter sparked. Flame worked. The blue in the smoke looked like a bruise against the gray sky, then like a flag when I fed it green tips. I ate 3 rose hips and pretended my body clapped. I warmed my palms, then the backs of my hands, then held my feet to the fire until pins and needles argued and won. I checked my ankle. Pink where it should be pink, not white or blue. Warm where it should be warm, not numb. Tender like a mouth, with a cut, but behaving. I patted it and apologized for thinking it weak. Night came tighter than the last 2, the way late winter does when it remembers what it is. Somewhere far off, a coyote tried a song and gave up. The creek clicked and whispered. The fire hissed sap and breathed. I took the little knife out and carved marks into a stick, one for each night, one for each plan made and kept. I had 2 lines now. That felt like the start of a ladder I could climb. I thought about Daniel again. I thought about the way he used to fix things in the house that didn't need fixing just to keep his hands busy. I thought about how Mason watched him, then watched me after he was gone, and learned that work looks like a person showing up even when they don't want to. Somewhere along the way, Mason had decided showing up meant I should do it for him. I had agreed too many times for it to be all his fault. A hard truth, but mine. Wind nudged the fire and the smoke turned and my eyes watered. I laughed once at the ridiculousness of crying because a small force in the world changed direction. Then I wiped my eyes and sang the lullaby again, softer. The words felt like thread stitching the day closed. I woke to a sky the color of a bruise healing. I stamped life back into my feet, packed ash, and left the shelter tidy for whatever creature might want it next. I checked my SOS letters. The wind had shuffled a few branches. I fixed them. The ridge waited, shoulder squared, asking what I had. I gave it everything my legs offered. At the top, the world opened. Trees like a dark sea, a ribbon of pale where a road might be, a line of mountain far and mean and beautiful. My breath made white ghosts that drifted and vanished. Then I heard it again. Engines. Closer than yesterday. One, then another, then a set moving together like a team that had done this before. I stood on the ridge and put both hands to my mouth and screamed, "Hey!" until my throat burned. The engines changed tone, slowed, turned. For a few heartbeats, I believed they had heard me. I waved my arms like I was trying to pull the sound by a rope. "Here!" I yelled, voice raw. "Here!" A break in the trees to the north brightened, and something moved through it. Flashes of color where no color should be. Orange, blue. The sound swelled. The hair on my arm stood. I ran, not smart, not planned. I ran anyway, down the ridge, through alder that tore at my jacket, ankle screaming like a siren and me promising it things I couldn't deliver if it would just hold a little longer. The noise grew into a body, and the body into a shape, and I burst into a small clearing as 2 ATVs rolled through from the left in a slow sweep like they were looking for. They cut their engines as one. The sudden silence rang in my ears. A man in a blaze orange cap pulled off his goggles. A woman, with a tight braid, lifted a hand. We stared at each other across 20 yards of ground and a lifetime of choices. "You all right?" The man called. "I will be," I said, and felt the truth of it like heat. He swung a leg off his machine and walked to me. Careful, hands visible, like you approach a scared foal. Up close, his eyes had that ranger steadiness people get after. Places like this train them. "I'm Oliver," he said. He glanced at my ankle, my hands, the smoke smell in my hair. His face changed. He knew. He didn't make me say it. "He left you," he said quietly. Not a question. "My son," I said. The words came out like a cough. "He took everything. I know," Oliver said. "We heard part of it over at the lodge from a clerk, who thought your boy's story smelled wrong. We came out looking anyway." He tipped his head toward the woman. "Kate." Her eyes softened and hardened at the same time. "You did good," she said. "You did the right things." Tears climbed up my nose and made me sound foolish when I tried to talk. I laughed around them instead. "I ate a bug," I said, because it was that kind of day. Kate grinned and offered a water bottle like a trophy. "Then you can drink out of a real bottle now, bug warrior." I drank. Oliver kept his voice steady, professional, safe. "There's a service trail. We can be at the lodge in 20 minutes. Do you want to call the rangers? The troopers? Both?" I thought of a boy with a smirk and a truck key and a sentence he thought would be the last line of my life. I thought of a man with my husband's name on a piece of brass and a scholarship in my bag waiting to be signed. I thought of what love looks like when it isn't blind. It looks like consequences and boundaries and telling the truth even when your heart dislikes it. "Yes," I said, "but first, get me there before he does." Oliver nodded as if I had given him a familiar order. "Climb on," he said. "Hold tight." I swung my leg over the rack, set my hands on the frame, and felt the machine rumble under me. Kate took the lead, orange bright against the green. The engine growled. Wind tore tears clean off my cheeks. The forest slid by, less a threat. Now then a witness. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel clever. I felt ready. Ready to walk into a warm room and meet the boy I had made with the woman I had been, and introduce him to the mother I had finally become. The ATV hummed under me as Oliver pushed through the trail. Wind whipped my face, carrying spruce and snow. Each bounce sent fire through my ankle, but I held on. I wasn't just holding on to the machine, I was holding on to something bigger, to breath, to anger, to a future I hadn't expected to have. But the engine's growl couldn't drown my thoughts. Every bump on the trail knocked open another memory, and they spilled out like pages in a storm. I remembered Mason as a baby, red-cheeked, fist-balled, his father's eyes in a smaller face. Daniel had held him like the world was both fragile and infinite. When Daniel died, Mason was just a boy with 2 big shoes at the funeral. His small hand clutched mine as if I were the only bridge across a river too wide. That day, I swore he'd never feel the hollow I felt. I swore I'd fill every empty space with love, with things, with protection. But promises, even the good ones, can turn poisonous. I saw him at 12, storming into the kitchen because I'd bought him sneakers that weren't the right brand. He'd thrown them in the trash. I'd driven back to the store and bought the ones he wanted. I saw him at 16, slamming the car door of the shiny sedan I'd bought after 3 months of extra shifts. "Finally," he'd muttered, "something decent." I saw him at 20, standing in my living room telling me allowance wasn't enough, that real friends had apartments paid for by their parents. And I, exhausted from double duty at the clinic, had written a check just to see him smile, even if it was a selfish smile. Every memory punched me now. Each one wasn't just a son's demand. It was a mother's failure to say no. And then, the betrayal yesterday. His smirk, his voice like a stranger's. "Let the Grizzlies keep you company, Mom." That wasn't just betrayal. That was the harvest of years I had planted with blind love. The ATV hit a rut, and I jolted back to the present, cold bit deeper as the sun slid down. My stomach was a hollow drum. I had lived on rose hips, spruce tips, and one fat grub. The emptiness made me dizzy. We stopped briefly so Oliver could scout ahead. I slid off the ATV and leaned against a tree. My legs shook. I remembered a patient once who'd starved too long before rescue. The same tremors, the same empty eyes. I pressed my palm to the tree's bark. "Not yet," I whispered. "Not until I see him again." When we moved again, the forest blurred. Dark. Trunks, white patches, green needles. But my mind sharpened. Hunger stripped away everything except what mattered. And what mattered was truth. That night, in a safer camp Oliver and Kate made, I sat by their fire. Real food, beans, bread, coffee, sat in my hands. I ate slow, tasting each bite like a gift. But my mind battled itself. One part whispered, "He's your son. He's all you have. Maybe forgive him." Another part screamed, "He abandoned you. He wanted your death. He doesn't deserve forgiveness." I closed my eyes. I saw Daniel again, his last breath, his last words. "Take care of him, Laura." Tears welled, hot against the cold night. I had taken care of Mason, but maybe too much. Enough to warp him. Enough to make him believe he didn't need me alive, just my money. I clenched my fists. No more. The wilderness had taught me something Mason never learned. Nothing is free. Every sip of water costs effort. Every flame costs fuel. Every step costs pain. I thought, this is what I should have taught him. That survival is earned, not handed out. As the fire cracked, I whispered into the flames, "I loved you too much, Mason. I gave until I broke. But now I will give you what you truly deserve, truth and consequences." By the time we neared the lodge, my body felt broken, but my will had become iron. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a survivor, and survival had burned the fog away. When I confronted Mason, I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't plead. I would be clear. He thought he had written the last line of my story in the forest. But I was going to write the ending myself. The wooden lodge came into view just as the last light drained from the horizon. Its windows glowed with amber warmth, standing like a lighthouse in an endless sea of dark spruce. My chest tightened. Not from the cold this time, but from the knowledge of what waited for me here. Oliver parked the ATV under the eaves, cut the engine, and silence rushed back in. I slid off slowly, every muscle stiff from 2 days of fighting the forest. My ankle screamed when my boot hit the ground, but I ignored it. Pain had become just another background noise. Inside, the air smelled of pine cleaner, coffee, and wood smoke. Ida, the gray-haired clerk, looked up from the counter. Her eyes lingered on my face, then my mud-streaked jacket, then Oliver's steady hand at my back. She didn't ask questions, she just set 2 keys on the counter. "Rooms." "Side by side," she said softly. "Connecting door." I closed my fingers around the key and nodded. My throat was too tight for thanks. The room was plain but clean, flannel. Curtains, a pine desk, a bedspread patterned with mountains. Civilization, yet it felt stranger than the forest. The shower hissed and filled the small bathroom with steam. Dirt swirled down the drain, but smoke and betrayal clung stubbornly to my skin. When I stepped out, my reflection startled me. Hollow eyes, lines deeper than last week. But behind the weariness was something harder, sharper. A survivor's stare. On the desk, Oliver placed a small black recorder. "Set it here," he said. "Press once to start, once to stop. The law's on your side." Kate leaned against the doorframe. "We'll be in the next room. If things turn, knock twice on the wall. We'll come through." I nodded. My hands trembled, not from fear of Mason, but from the weight of years pressing against this moment. After they left, I sat at the desk and pulled a sheet of paper from the drawer. I wrote down everything I wanted to remember if he tried to twist. The truth? He left me with nothing. He told me to meet the Grizzlies. This wasn't an accident. It was a choice. I folded the paper and slid it into my pocket. Not because I'd need to read it, but because the act of writing it made it real. At 8:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Mason. For a moment, I just stared at the name glowing on the screen. My son, my betrayer, my would-be killer. I pressed answer. Set. The recorder running and said nothing. Mom? His voice was syrup. Sweet. Too smooth. Oh, thank God, Mom. I've been looking for you everywhere. Are you okay? I'm alive, I said, my tone flat as stone, a beat of silence, then a brittle laugh. Alive? That's incredible. I was so worried I went for help, but you thought your plan worked. The words cut him. I could hear his breathing change, hear the mask slip. What plan? He said quickly. Mom, what are you talking about? Where are you? Almost at the lodge, he said too fast. 10 minutes, maybe less. I'll explain everything when I get there. It's just a misunderstanding. No, I said quietly. It's clarity. I ended the call. My hand trembled, but my heartbeat slowed. He was coming. The minutes dragged like hours. I sat in the chair facing the door, the recorder red light blinking steady on the desk. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. The lodge door opened and closed. Boots scuffed down the hall. The key scraped in my lock. Once, twice. Then it clicked. The door swung open, and there he was. He stood framed in the doorway, the boy I had raised, but his eyes were sharp with calculation. His clothes smelled faintly of cologne, too clean for a man who'd just abandoned his mother in the forest. He looked past me, at the bed, the bathroom, the desk, as if expecting an empty room. Then his gaze landed on me, alive, waiting. Mom, he breathed, voice caught between shock and fear. You're here? I am. My voice was calm. Surprised? He forced a shaky laugh. Of course not. I was coming back for you. I got lost. I panicked. You told me to meet the Grizzlies, I said. His mouth opened, then closed. The words had caught him like barbed wire. He stepped fully into the room, his eyes darting around like a cornered animal. His voice trembled with practiced concern. Mom, listen, you don't understand. I panicked out there. I was going to get help, I swear. I never meant to leave you. I didn't move. My hands rested on the desk, steady, the recorder's red light blinking just beside them. Stop lying, Mason. You looked me in the eye, smirked, and told me to meet the Grizzlies. That wasn't panic. That was a choice. His face flushed, then paled. He laughed nervously and rubbed the back of his neck. You're just tired, Mom. You must have misheard. Look, I know it sounds bad, but I was scared too. I just thought... You thought I'd die out there, I cut in. And you'd come home to everything I built, my savings, my house, my life's work. That was your plan, wasn't it? He froze. The mask slipped. For a moment, the boy I raised was gone, and only the cold, greedy man remained. His jaw tightened, his voice sharpened. You made me this way. You smothered me with your rules, your control, your guilt. You think handing me money all these years made you a good mother? No. It made me your prisoner. My throat burned, but my voice stayed calm. I gave you everything, and you decided it wasn't enough. You decided the only way to be free was to bury me in the forest. He slammed a hand against the wall, anger spilling over. Because you never trusted me. You never let me live without strings attached. Every dollar came with your judgment. Every choice I made, you hovered. You wanted me weak so you could feel strong. So yeah, maybe I thought you deserved a taste of your own medicine. I stood slowly, the chair scraping back against the floor. The room felt smaller now, the air heavy. You didn't give me medicine, Mason. You gave me a death sentence, and you failed. His eyes darted to the door, then to the window, then back to me. You won't tell anyone, he said, his tone low, desperate. You can't. It'll ruin everything. We can forget this happened. You and me, fresh start. I shook my head. No fresh starts, not this time. He stepped closer, trying to soften his voice, slipping into that same tone he used as a child when he wanted something. Mom, please. I messed up. I was angry. I didn't mean it. Don't do this. I'm your son. The word cut deep, but I held my ground. You stopped being my son the moment you decided my death was worth more than my life. His face crumbled. Rage, fear, denial, all of it flashed across him in seconds. You can't just erase me. You need me. You'll die alone without me. I'd rather be alone than live one more day raising the monster I created. A soft knock came from the connecting door. 2 knocks, the signal. Oliver stepped inside, calm and solid, Kate behind him. Mason spun toward them, startled. What the hell is this? He shouted. Witnesses, Oliver said evenly. He held up his phone, the screen glowing with a waveform still recording. We've heard enough. Mason's voice cracked. This is insane. You can't do this to me. The heavy knock of law followed. The door opened, and 2 troopers entered, their presence filling the room with finality. Mason's words tangled in his throat. He backed away as they moved toward him. Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back. No, wait, she's lying. She's crazy. The cuffs clicked shut. The sound was small, but it changed everything. As they read him his rights, his eyes, locked on mine. For the first time, I saw fear. Not of bears or wilderness, but of consequences he couldn't talk his way out of. Mom, he whispered, his voice breaking, please don't do this. Please. I looked at him, my heart heavy but steady. You already did this to yourself. The troopers led him out. His protests echoed down the hall, growing fainter, until the door closed behind them. Silence settled over the room like snow. Oliver placed a hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. I let out a long, shuddering breath. My body trembled, but not from cold this time, from release. Years of guilt, of enabling, of blind love had led here. And now it was over. I walked to the desk, picked up the folded paper in my pocket, and tore it in half. I didn't need reminders anymore. The truth had been spoken, recorded, witnessed. Outside, the night air was sharp, but it smelled like freedom. I looked up at the dark sky, stars scattered like broken glass, and whispered to Daniel. I kept my promise. I took care of him. Just not the way we thought. I stood taller, my breath steady. He wanted the forest to end me. Instead, it remade me. And when the world tried to close the book on my story, I wrote my own ending.